Hello, welcome to part 2 of the Q&A that I promised I would do about a year ago and forgot to follow up on. Part 1 covered all the questions about either myself or my YouTube channel. I thought it turned out pretty well, so if you want to go give it a listen, it is on this channel. This part is going to cover all of my questions about TF2 specifically. The reason I decided to separate them is because I got a lot of TF2 specific questions, and obviously is my main thing that I do on my channel. I have a lot to say about it, so I thought it would make for an interesting video. I did all the intro stuff in the first one, so let's go. I will note at least that some of the questions were kind of ambiguous, and I was sorting these at like 4 in the morning, so I probably didn't do a great job. Some of these aren't strictly TF2 related, but all of them, I mean, they relate to the game in some way or another. So like the first one, there were a couple questions that I got asked quite a bit, even though the wording was a little bit different between them. The idea behind them was the same, so I combined them all into one central question that covers the same idea. The first one, and probably most asked TF2 related question, is my thoughts on the current state and the future of TF2. I mentioned this a little bit, but I'm not... Okay, I guess I'm not super hopeful for the future of TF2, but I'm not gonna be a doomer about it either. I think there's a possibility that things will continue to get better and that Valve will finally decide to do something, but I don't think it's likely. It's maybe a 20 to 30% chance. Obviously, that's not impossible. That's still fairly reasonable as far as odds go, but at the same time, I'm not going to bank on it. I kind of expect my realistic expectations of that TF2 continues to take its current trajectory, and while we may have like community-created tools that help deal with the bots and whatnot, the game will slowly suffer from the same decay that it's been suffering from now. And I mean, it is a slow decay. Like I mentioned, I don't think we're about to witness the imminent death of TF2 any day now, but at the same time, I would be very surprised if this game was still going as strong as it is in like 5 years from now. My thoughts on the current state of TF2 are that, honestly, I'm not the biggest fan. I think there's a lot of problems aside from the bots that people don't really talk about too much. The most obvious one is that community servers are dying at an alarming rate. There are a lot of community servers that I frequented even a couple years ago that aren't online anymore. And I can't really blame the community servers for not wanting to be online anymore because, I mean, if inevitably people are going to stop joining and they're going to have low player counts. I mean, servers aren't free, so it makes sense that they take it offline. That being said, though, it's like I've seen a lot of these where just because Valve doesn't promote community modes too much, just because people don't have an easy way to find them and server owners don't have an easy way to advertise them outside of like YouTubers and stuff, where community servers will just die. They don't have any exposure, and because of that, they don't really have a future either. Community servers, I think, were for the longest time considered to be the future of TF2, and even now, I think they have the highest chance of offering the best quality stuff. It's just that they don't, and even the ones that do don't survive too long because no one's willing to give them exposure. There's a lot I think that actually I personally can do to promote them, and I've considered doing like some kind of community server spotlight where I go through ones that I think either have good game modes. Probably they would deviate more from the like standard vanilla but not as try-hardy as Uncletopia servers that most people want, but as far as ones that run niche game modes, I really have considered, and I probably will at some point, go through ones that I think have either interesting mods or are just clean enough, like Randomizer or TF2 x 10 or Saxton Hale servers that people should join and try them out because I think they're a good way to get into a more niche aspect of the mode. On top of that, casual's in a pretty bad state too. Again, ignoring the bots, most casual games that I get into are either completely unbalanced to the point where one team is like mopping the floor with the other team and it's not even really a competition, or the team compositions are so incredibly stale and unfun to fight against that it just feels like bashing your head up against a brick wall. Most notably, and I know this isn't really a new problem, but I've definitely gotten tired of it more recently, Power Clash spam is a major problem. I see like multiple servers, especially payload ones, where it's like the other team consists of like 4 soldiers, 3 demos, 3 heavies, 4 engineers, and 3 medics, which I think is more than 12, but whatever. And there is just so much health going around and so much DPS packed into one little choke point that there's basically nothing you individually can do to contribute to the team. You can maybe sit in the back lines and like pick people off as sniper, or sit there and spawn with a scout and build up Uber to try to push, but like there isn't really much you can do without a lot of team coordination. And the reason that I find that to be a problem is because the other team isn't really coordinating to do this. It's just a lot of people individually chose to play power classes because that's what they thought would be the most fun or whatever, but then your team, in order to counter that, has to put in unreasonably comparative amounts of coordination in order to counter that. That's the issue that I have, is that there's a lot of strategies, even like on a smaller scale, like heavy medic combos, that just require way too much coordination than you're going to see in like an average casual game to actually take down effectively. And those sorts of strategies just get very frustrating to fight when you see them on literally every server, and it seems like every single map, especially the payload ones. And also on top of class compositions, there are a lot of kind of bullshit weapons. You have stuff like the Vaccinator and the Wrangler and the Natasha and the Kunai and the Flog and anything that Sniper has and the Diamondback, and it's just like, okay, you get tired of fighting these frankly frustrating weapons, even if they're not strictly overpowered, because they just don't penalize you for being a bad player. They penalize you for attempting to have fun. But that's been what's rubbing me the wrong way with TF2 recently, and I guess some of that could be attributed to burnout too. You could just say that, oh, I'm overexposed to all of this and that a new player probably wouldn't have the same problems. Is that true? Maybe debatably, but I do think that mixing stuff up is a great way to keep people invested in a game and not let it grow stale. But I think that's my overall thought on the current state of TF2. That being said, though, I mean, TF2 is at the end of the day TF2. I will rant about all of this, and I will be super frustrated with the game, and then inevitably, like the next day, I'll get into a really fun game, and then I'll remember why I enjoy playing and whatnot. But anyway, that's kind of my overall stance. Maybe that'll change in the future, but I think without like too many balance updates and stuff, and especially not without community servers to take my mind off of casual, so to speak. Usually when I got frustrated with casual back in the day, I would go into like Prop Hunter, TF2x10, or Saxton Hale, just to play something stupid or out of the ordinary, and just, I don't know, try to work around the weirdness there, because obviously that's like meant to be broken. But with those not really being popular anymore, you just can't really do anything but casual, and I think that's a problem. Question that I got asked a lot, number 2, is what my favorite weaponry skin is. Very original, guys. Probably, though, I would say it's the Nostromo Napalmer. It would be really hard for me to not say that one, although the Black Rose is also really good. I just wish those were strange. Honestly, the only reason why I have any hesitancy between those two at all is because neither of them are strange, and I feel like if I'm going to use a weapon as my main weapon, I would want it to be able to track kills over my lifetime. Oh, also the Shooting Star, which even though I don't really use the Machina too much, does look and sound really cool. If sound design's factored in, it probably is the Shooting Star, actually. And then the final TF2-related question I got asked a ton is what my HUD is. It's kind of a Frankenstein between a lot of different HUDs, and it's not even complete. I think off the top of my head, the ones that I use, and I had to custom modify them to get them to work together properly, are Improved Default HUD, Enhanced Default HUD, which, yes, are two different ones, Centered Default HUD, and a couple other, like, weird hot fixes that I don't think have their own name, but they are thrown in there as well. I think, like, Improved Kill Icons, a couple things to, like, smooth out the textures. There are a few. Eventually, when I get them working properly, I will release my HUD as like a full package. The issue is that I'm still running into a lot of weird problems that I'd want to iron out before releasing it. So eventually I will put that out there, but right now it's a little bit too janky. So moving on to specific questions, I got a lot of them asking what my opinion is on X, Y, or Z weapon. I'll rapid fire those at the end, or just, I don't know, force you to wait for a video talking about them, because I feel like that's a better use of my time there. But ignoring those for now, in an alternative universe where Valve could give exemplar TF-tubers a community quality item of their choice, which item would you pick? It can be either a cosmetic or a weapon. That is difficult. I don't know if there's like a single item that I'm not only known for, but I also use on a regular basis. I probably switch up my loadout a lot more than a lot of other TF2 YouTubers, and on top of that, there aren't any, like, all-class unusuals, which would be my initial thought, that I really become associated with. I think instead of having a TF2 character renders, like my persona, like some people do, I just have the bird. I think the bird works a lot better. If we're allowed to bend the rules of this question a little bit, I'd probably choose to have like my bird as one of the bird heads for Pyro. I've always wanted that to happen, and I've actually considered like commissioning someone to do it and upload it to the workshop. I'd probably get a lot of people mad at me for doing that though, so we'll say that's cheating as far as this question is concerned. But for weapons, I'd probably choose the soda popper because I think that's the one that I use the most out of everything. And for hats, that would be a tough choice, but I'd probably choose the one that I currently have, which is the Salty Dog as my main unusual. I think that would be really cool to have a unusual community sparkle Salty Dog. What's the biggest drop you've ever gotten from MVM? So this one actually has some lore. So we used to do a stream series called Schizo MVM where we basically just record really late at night and it would always go off the rails very quickly. And I guess I should mention that yes, at some point we probably will come back to that. We're just kind of on hiatus for now. But the reason why we even decided to do Schizo MVM in the first place is because when I was recording footage for, I believe it was like how fast can you get every TF2 achievement or whatever that video is called, I needed MVM footage for the MVM section of that. So I invited the What Show and Zenith and Ushi to join me for MVM just because I didn't really feel like doing an entire tour on my own. And we had like pretty deep conversations for the first half of it, and then eventually it just got so late at night that we just started talking about nonsense. And we started doing like regular show role play at some point, I'm pretty sure, and that was the inspiration for Schizo MVM. That was what made us realize that it would be funny as a stream. But anyway, the biggest drop that I ever got from MVM was actually at the end of that, which was an Australian wrench, a professional Killstreak sticky bomb kit, a specialized Killstreak Iron Bomber kit, and a Killstreak Medigun. So it's like all 4 items that you would want individually, like all packed into one. It was a ridiculous drop. I think it added up to like $110 total. So I've never gotten a golden pan, but that's probably, bar none, I mean, the best that I've ever gotten. IDK, if you've said this before, but what's your favorite class and weapon / loadout? Again, it's hard for me to pick. I mix up my class and weapons so much that it's like, okay, the pool to pick from, to give some context, is Scout, with either the Soda Popper or Scattergun or Shortstop as primary, like maybe the Cleaver and Pretty Boy's Pocket Pistol as secondary, and the Atomizer as melee. So like 4 things for just Scout. But then I also play Soldier with like a bunch of different weapons, Pyro with a bunch of different weapons, and Demo with a bunch of different weapons, and I still occasionally pick like Engineer and Sniper if I'm really bored. So there's a lot to choose from, but I would probably say my go-tos more often than not are Pyro with like the Degreaser, Flare Gun, and Extinguisher, or maybe the Scorch Shot if I'm just feeling especially devilish, and Scout with the Soda Popper, Cleaver, and Atomizer. But I don't play Scout too much anymore because it feels like people just spam power classes and you can't really do anything if you're not a power class too. But yeah, those would probably be my, I guess, conceptual favorites, ignoring the playtime of my classes of recent. Oh, and also related to that, this wasn't like a specific question, but I know I have been asked this before. Some people wonder, because like it's kind of customary for TF2 YouTubers to have some sort of class and loadout as a mascot of sorts. I do have one of those. Like I said, I use my bird more often, but the one that I use at least somewhat frequently is my Pyro, which looks like this. Don't ask why it looks like this. I don't remember. I think I like unboxed the mask and someone traded me the head warmer, and okay, I know it looks furry-ish. Don't say anything, all right? I'm aware. What advice would you give to Pyros to time their reflects and combos better? So as for timing reflects, the unfortunate truth is that you're going to get a lot better out of just practicing reflecting and getting a better reaction time than you are predicting. That being said, though, against good soldiers, predicting is huge, and oftentimes you can obliterate people that probably don't even expect you to be able to reflect if you just learn the specific timing of when most of them tend to shoot. What I usually do is I'll stand within, like, reactable distance from a rocket, so, like, I'll stand back probably a good couple yards just to make sure I actually have time to reflect if a soldier shoots. However, if a soldier catches on to this and he knows that, like, yeah, I probably shouldn't shoot at the Pyro with the Degreaser, what I'll do is I'll start running at him with my M1 active, so he actually starts taking fire damage. usually most soldiers will panic, and right as the fire touches them, they'll shoot a rocket. And then based on that, I'll air blast right as I expect my fire to touch them, and more often than not, I find that this actually works, and I can get like a point-blank reflect off. I don't know why. I don't know why that's like something that every single soldier does. I think they just panic because they start taking damage, but that is the trick that I've used. And obviously there is a little bit more intuition than that. It's not something that you can like rationalize out. You do have to get the feel for it, but it works a stupid amount of times, and you can catch cocky soldiers off guard so much. As for timing combos, that's harder to answer because, I mean, combos can be about anything. There isn't really a timing if you're using flare gun and degreaser as much as there is just learning prediction and aim and stuff. So it's just, yeah, air blast people. If they're in your face and you really want them out of your face, try to air blast them up against a wall if you can, because it's just easier to hit. Or alternatively, if you're finding it hard to follow up on air blast, don't air blast them at all. Just puff and sting and then pull out your melee and finish them off. It's a pretty easy 3-hit combo. They get neutered a little bit with the degreaser nerfs back in Tough Break, but it still works more often than not. And especially even if you don't get the full combo off, I mean, they're going to have at least 100 damage taken from the flare, so you don't really need to worry too much about it. Alternatively, if you're trying to do Extinguisher, what I've found really helpful is to use the Scorch Shot to extend the combos. Now, I don't normally recommend to use the Scorch Shot because that's evil. However, if you're doing it like this and you're not spamming it, I found that most people really won't complain. If you do something impressive looking, most people won't really care as much as if you're just like shooting Scorch Shots into a hallway and annoying people as much. So the combo that I have found is if you burn people with your degreaser just a little bit, just to get some afterburn tacked onto them, air blast them ideally again against a wall, but you can do this, I think, really anywhere as long as they aren't able to strafe away behind cover. Pull out your Scorch Shot and hit center mass if you can, because it just makes the timing on the bounce a little bit easier. And then as the Scorch Shot is like traveling through the air, immediately pull out your Extinguisher and run in. You do kind of have to commit to it. You do have to act as if the Scorch Shot will hit, and if you miss, you are kind of screwed. But if you do this properly, they will still be kind of stunned midair as you're running up to them with an Extinguisher, and you're going to get like max damage too, because they'll be at full afterburn. Alternatively, if you could do it up against a wall, that's even better, because not only will they take the initial hit from the Scorch Shot, but they'll also immediately take the splash damage too, and that gets you, I think, actually max damage, like the 10-second afterburn damage, which is really a lot. That gets you like 167, which for most classes will kill. And I'm going to remind you, for people complaining that, oh, that's a lot of damage, that's way too stupid that Pyro can do this. Remember, he used to be able to instantly do 195, and arguably still should, but that's a story for another day. So yeah, I don't do too much class-based stuff. I'm not really a vocal Pyro main. I just kind of play him on my off time, but I have learned a lot about how to do the combos effectively, and that's what I found to be the most effective. What are your 10 favorite and 10 least favorite TF2 maps? Goodness gracious, that's a lot of maps. Tell you what, I'm just gonna show you a tier list of all the maps that I can think to rank off the top of my head. There are probably going to be a lot of them in the dude, I don't know, I've not played them that much category, but this is at least 10 favorite and least favorite. That's, I don't know, I feel like if I don't do it this way, I'm going to be sitting here trying to rack my brain for maps for like an hour. What's your thoughts on the idea of TF2 going to Source 2 like CSGO did? Do you think it would be a positive or a negative? I think it would be a positive, honestly. I mean, okay, so everyone complains that, oh, rocket jumping would break if you ported it to Source 2. It wouldn't, okay? TF2 has programmed in rocket jumping as a mechanic. It's not an accidental glitch anymore like most people thought. Maybe it was in Quake like 20 years ago, but nowadays, yeah, TF2 has intentionally programmed that as a mechanic. That being said, certain other mechanics like trimping and trick stabbing are probably going to be a lot different, but TF2 then, if they ported it to Source 2, would be able to officialize a lot of otherwise unintentional mechanics like trimping. They would be able to maybe polish it up so it's a little bit more intuitive, maybe do some extra stuff on top of that to, like, I don't know, if you're trimping, add some like particle effects or something so people know that you're doing it. I don't know. There's a lot of interesting things you could do with that, but really I can't think of a universe, unless Valve just did it incredibly ineptly, that porting to Source 2 would be a bad thing. That being said, it wouldn't fix every single problem. I think there are other things you would do on top of porting it that would be better, but there would be a lot of immediate positives that I could point out. If not only the fact that the player count would shoot up and that it would mean that Valve is working on the game again. Do you tolerate the gameplay when playing as Heavy? Strange way to phrase this, but no, I don't really tolerate it. Heavy and Medic are the most boring classes in the game, not only to play, but also to play against. Honestly, I genuinely am of the opinion that TF2 would be better if Heavy and Medic were reworked significantly to the point where they barely even resemble what they do now. The main issues that I have with Heavy is that it doesn't really scratch an itch in the same way that playing other classes do. Scout is really fun because you're able to run around the map with a high mobility but close range option that requires you to get up in people's faces. Hitting scattergun meat shots is incredibly rewarding, and I love the way the scattergun works. Soldier is really fun because you can fly around the map with the gunboats and you have like infinite mobility and your rockets do so much damage, and I don't know, it's just such a fluid gameplay, and it's the reason why I love to play Roamer so much, that just no other class can really replicate. Pyro has really fun combos. Demo has insane damage potential that's actually rewarding to hit because Pills and Sticky, okay, well, Pills at least, are actually pretty challenging to aim, and if not, even if you're just spamming, it's still pretty cool to see, like, how many people you can take down by just like flinging stickies into a crowd and trying to get that. Hell, even Engineer and Sniper, who are also classes that play at a snail's pace, have some rewarding attributes to them. Engineer, I find, opens up a lot of strategy just because of like the way that you can place buildings. If you work in stuff like the Eureka effect, there's a ton of strategy, a ton of cheesy stuff you can do with that. And then Sniper is raw aim. There isn't really anything that compares to hitting fully charged headshots like multiple back-to-back in a row. Heavy has nothing. Heavy and Medic literally don't do anything remotely satisfying to justify me ever picking them. Sure, they may carry a game. Sure, they may be what my team needs to push. I don't fucking care. I'm not going to play them because they're boring. If I pick Heavy or Medic, it is me admitting defeat. Me admitting that, yes, I am willing to trade my personal ability to have fun for the team. And I'm not going to do that because it's casual. I'm never going to try that hard. The only times I ever pick Heavier for videos, and I think, like, both times I've picked him in recent memory for the video, I ended up getting on, like, a 25-plus kill streak on my first life because you just walk forward with 450 health and it's completely brain dead. And, like, yeah, I know you're supposed to be able to get backstabbed and headshot and stuff, but if you rub two brain cells together and remember to turn 180 degrees every once in a while, or, you know, just remember if there's even a spy on the enemy team in the first place, because sometimes there won't be. You're basically invincible. There isn't really much you can do to die, and you're just walking forward at a snail's pace and just doing a bunch of damage and mowing people down, but it's not even in a satisfying way. I never find sustained damage to be of any sort of value unless it's something where you have to, like, ADS and get, like, a laser beam that does pretty decent damage at long range if you can track. I don't know. Heavy just sucks. Oh, what have you done? You put a heavy question in here and you got me to go on a rant. I'm sorry. Did you ever play on those old Mario Kart servers? And if you did, do you miss them? I don't think I ever played quote-unquote pure Mario Kart. I always played with some sort of gimmick like a randomizer in TF2 x 10. Actually, there used to be a really good randomizer in TF2 x 10 server that ran Mario Kart, so that's why I guess I say those two things specifically, but I do miss those types of servers. Maybe Mario Kart itself was a little bit janky, but those sorts of like crazy visual vomit community servers had a lot of charm in ways that casual just doesn't, and I think I miss the atmosphere more than the official servers that ran them. What's your opinion on Pyro's flamethrower being able to reduce healing from mediguns and dispensers? I like the concept. The execution, though, is horrible because, okay, so consider this. When you're afflicted by Afterburn, you have reduced healing from mediguns and dispensers. However, Afterburn is considered a status effect, and dispensers and mediguns reduce the duration of status effects, meaning that if you walk up to a dispenser, you're dealing with a reduced heal rate for like less than 2 seconds. It's pointless. That being said, I think that fire reducing healing would be an interesting mechanic. I'm just not sure that putting it on WM1 would be the way to do it. I don't think we should be encouraging pyros to WM1 much at all. which I know kind of runs contrary to his character, but in my opinion, everything should be balanced around comboing, because that's the one unique thing the class has. And if you don't do that, you get a very brainless class who only has a very low skill ceiling to play around. I think Combo Pyro, even though it does have a little bit more stuff going on under the hood, and does require you to learn a little bit more, is ultimately the best outcome for Pyro. It has the most potential. That being said, I also don't think putting it on flares is a good idea, because then you're just encouraged to spam at people. Again, spamming is not what I want. I think combos should be good, so maybe adding it as like a unique status effect that only applies to certain melees, or even just the Cow Mangler or something is the way to go. Again, I don't know if Pyro has the tools necessarily that fairly inflict that debuff properly compared to something like Soldier does. It's kind of sad. Pyro needs more skill-based options, dude. If you could add or remove one stat shown or hidden from any TF2 weapon, what would it be? Okay, Pyro Brain kicking in hardcore here and saying to remove the damage penalty from the extinguisher. You have a weapon that deals mini crits conditionally, which do 35% more damage, and then it has a 33% damage penalty. Why? What what were they thinking? Or at the very least, just make the damage penalty on non-burning players. Let the full damage hits actually do something. Right now, you can't even kill a medic with like minimum afterburn, which is stupid. If I'm going in for a kill against a very light class, I should not have to gamble. That being said, though, I'd also consider removing the Air Blast cooldown from the Dragon's Fury. I don't think that's a necessary stat, especially because the Dragon's Fury needs so much like manual input to work. You can't just WM1. You have to aim. That is the downside. You have to aim. What do you consider to be the most overlooked and underrated weapon in all of TF2? Probably the shortstop. There are a couple that I think would fit this category. I think recently I talked about the thermal thruster being in that, but it doesn't even come close to the shortstop, I think, overall. The main reason why people don't like the shortstop, okay, the main two reasons are that, number one, it works really differently from the rest of the scatterguns, and if you try to use it like a scattergun, it's not going to do the job you want. And number two, the shove is really gimmicky, and in fact, the shove is so unfathomably bad that it turns people off from using the primary fire of the weapon, even though the primary fire is actually insanely good. So I feel like it's just kind of an awkward to use weapon, and it kind of pushes most people away toward the more traditional scatterguns. That being said, the shortstop does a lot of things that no other shotgun type weapon in the game do. It does a lot of damage at mid-range. It has a hidden plus 100% damage bonus. The pellets do double damage. And even though it only fires a few pellets, the pellets are very accurate, meaning that you're guaranteed to do like 50 to 60 damage at a range where the stock scattergun would only be doing like 20 to 30. So the mid-range capability on its own is really good, but this thing also fires and reloads extremely quickly. This has the same firing speed almost as the Soda Popper. I think it's like slightly lower. But because it reloads its entire clip at once and you have double the clip size as the Soda Popper, the long-term damage output you get is insane from the shortstop. It's not as good short-term. It does require like maybe one more shot to kill most classes than like the stock scattergun would point blank. However, it actually does break a lot of the same thresholds as the stock scattergun, but it does them faster. Like, for instance, you can 2-tap light classes a lot faster than with the stock scattergun. Pyros and demos, even though they take 3 shots to kill, you do those 3 shots in about the same amount of time that the stock scattergun takes to do 2. And there's a lot more leniency because you don't have to be directly up in someone's face to do them. Overall, the shortstop has probably some of the most untapped potential out of any scattergun just because, again, the damage is way higher than most people assume. And I love running the shortstop, especially with the Criticola, and just blowing people away at ranges that really no shotgun-type weapon should. If you had to delete a class from the game forever, what would it be and why? Okay, so if we're talking conceptually, where you, like, rework a class to the point where they're unrecognizable from their current version, and in turn you basically remove them, I mean, obviously it's going to be Sniper. Sniper just doesn't mesh with the rest of the philosophy of TF2's design. That being said, if you mean physically taking a class out of the game, it would probably be Heavy. The reason is that I can't think of any way to make Heavy interesting based on what exists. Sniper, I could very easily see being reworked into a much more patient, like slower firing class that still does insane damage at long range, but can only do it every so often, meaning that he's a lot more of a specialized pick than the generalist he is now. Or alternatively, I could see him being more of like what he is in TF2 Classic with the hunting revolver, where he's more of a mid-range class. And at longer ranges, sure, he can still put up damage, but like every other class in the game, he has damage fall off and does want to close the distance. And those changes are pretty conceptually basic. You don't have to change too much about Sniper to get that. Heavy, on the other hand, I honestly can't think of anything you could do to Heavy to make him fun to fight and also fun to play. I've seen suggestions like, oh, just give him more food items and then he's just the shittier medic. Oh, give him a riot shield, as if any game that ever has added a riot shield has actually had it fun to play against. Oh, just make Heavy like Fat Scout, which actually I think is probably the best way, but then he's just a shittier scout? It's like, I don't know, I feel like having a class with 200 health in the form of your soldier be your team's anchor is fine. You don't need a 300 health class to act as a tank, especially in a game where mobility is way more important than tankiness. Even Medic, who in my opinion is probably one of the most poorly designed classes currently just because of how many things he can do that other classes can't and how over-reliant everyone else is on him. Okay, well, actually, probably Sniper is still the worst design class, but Medic is number 2. Even Medic, I think there are ways to rework other classes to make Medic not as bad in comparison. Heavy, on the other hand, I can't think of any redeeming way to make his current design work. He is basically built to be tied to the ground with no tech. People try to say that jump revving is a tech. No, it's not. Press 2 buttons on your keyboard at once. That's all you have to do. Compared to, like, what, rocket jumping, which requires a lot of different buttons to be pressed when you're air strafing and vectoring, and I don't know, it's just a lot. So that would be my pick. And for the record, I hate the concept of removing any class from the game because I think all of them at this point are so iconic, not only as classes, but as characters, that removing any single one is a bad idea. But if there's any that I think belongs in the game the least, honestly, it is Heavy. I just don't see any way to let Heavy exist in tandem with the rest of TF2's classes and not overlap with anything, and also like fit the modern design philosophy where every class should have at least some sort of higher skilled tech to keep them going. If I could add any of my weapon concepts into TF2, which would it be? I think the throwable healing jar for Medic that replaces his melee would be very interesting. I think that would mix up the Medic meta a lot. That being said, that would also mix up balance a lot. I would really want to see that one tested, so I think my safer pick is probably the engineer primary that I made that lets you like mark a target that fires slugs. I think that would be a very interesting way to let engineer mix up his loadouts too and not have to focus on the Wranglers much. I got into TF2 during the summer update and racked about 600 hours in the game since then. I'm loving it, but I've noticed that it's becoming harder to see if I'm actually improving at the game or not. After a while, the medal system starts to not mean anything and my KD ratios look the same. How do you, who is someone who I presume has a lot more hours than I, gauge improvement with the class or a weapon? Okay, so first of all, yeah, you're right in saying that the medals don't really offer anything. The experience given is not the same over every like class and weapon. For instance, if you play Sniper, you're going to get a lot of experience very quickly because like headshots give you more experience, or more accurately, they give you more points, but I'm fairly certain experience is based on the points you get in game. Anyway, the way that I personally measure improvement is usually actually through my KD, but I find that there's like other specific tech that I find that when I realize I can consistently pull off and I can consistently do the things that I'm aiming to do with a weapon or class, that's when I've realized I've improved. I don't know if there is a one-size-fits-all answer to this question. What I will say at least is that just use what you have fun using. Don't stress too much about getting better, in my opinion, unless you're specifically aiming to play competitive. If you use what you enjoy, you will naturally get better with it. Maybe look into like YouTube videos. If you like using like the black box or something, just Google like TF2 black box tech, or even just TF2 soldier tech. Try to get better at rocket jumping if you like soldier, combos if you like pyro. I don't know. There's like more of a class-based skill than a weapon-based skill, I think, for most things. But there are some pretty good tutorials on YouTube if you want to check it out. But I don't know. I think my core message at the end of the day would be, don't stress it. Don't worry too much about how good you are at TF2. Are you more so grateful for the 10 years of content and updates TF2 has already had, or more disappointed by the still unofficial decision to discontinue support for TF2 and move on to other projects? I would actually say that I am more so disappointed. I wouldn't be as disappointed if they gave some kind of official closure and they just said like, you know, Thanks for the support that TF2's had, but we are moving on. That's, I think, a lot more disappointing to me than the fact that we're not getting updates anymore. It's the fact that they're still pretending that we will. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm very glad that Valve continued to support this game well past the time that they should have, but there were a lot of missteps as they were supporting it, and I think that had Valve had priorities elsewhere and made better decisions supporting the game when they were, it would still be getting supported, and I think that's what's disappointing me the most. Is there anything about TF2's core gameplay that you hate and think makes the game worse, but can't think of a way to fix it in a meaningful way without breaking a ton of other stuff? There are two things that I'll give. One is what I mentioned earlier, and that power class spam is by far the most effective strategy for 12v12 casual. There isn't really anything you can do about it that doesn't require you, like, rallying your entire team in voice chat and doing, like, completely unrealistic stuff that most teams aren't going to do. So as a result, most matches just become who has more power classes, and you can't really play characters like Scout or Pyro to the effectiveness that I wish you could. Obviously, there isn't really any way to prevent that other than redesigning a bunch of classes, or just Medic, actually. Honestly, redesigning Medic might fix a lot of that, but that's my easy cop-out answer. The other one that I'll say is that at least in skilled lobbies, I don't believe 12v12 is the best mode for TF2. If you look at servers like UncleTopia, and anyone's ever thought that they just feel a lot less manageable than casual, in my opinion, that's because TF2 only can really support like maybe 6 to 7 quote-unquote good players per team. Once you get like 12 really good players per team, everything kind of falls apart because it's just a lot more stalemated than I think it otherwise should be. There's no real way to make progress when every single person is earning their keep and like either pushing insanely well or defending insanely well. I think that just becomes very unfun very quickly. So for skilled TF2 lobbies, I think the sweet spot's about 8v8. That's just, I don't know, when I find like really good, well-matched games, they usually tend to be about 8 or 9 players on each team. So that's, I don't know, that's my opinion there. Other than that, though, I mean, there are a lot of minor stuff, but I don't think there's anything major that, like, breaks TF2 that I wish they'd fix. You mentioned you're unhappy with TF2 x 10's current state. What changed to make you feel this way, and are there any specific gripes you have with it, i.e. meta or weapon oversaturation? I think oversaturation of the meta weapons, and also the fact that the meta weapons are extremely unfun, really just turns off my will to experiment with anything new. TF2 x 10 has been running long enough on a single map with a single set of balance that it's just gotten old. I think that's mainly the core issue, but at the same time, it's like, how many times can you really join a server and be expected to have fun playing against, like, light speed Huel long heater heavies that just melt you instantly and can never be killed because they have, like, 800 health, and kunai spies, which also kill you instantly and can instantly cloak and decloak with 2100 health, still a marvel of balancing. Or pyros who right-click you once and you're just off the map. You're sent to the stratosphere and there's not really much you can do about it. Or you even like the less egregious classes like Sniper, who somehow one of the more balanced classes in the mode still has something like the Classic, and if you play that on like the top of higher tower, like 20 tiers up the tower, what are you expected to do against that? I don't know. It's just every class has something really annoying that it seems like everyone uses now, and the fact that it's only played on high tower, or I guess higher tower, means that you can never experiment with other strategies because people have completely solved the game. The game just needs updated. That's the biggest concern that I have with it. It's just grown stale. Why do you wear Christmas cosmetics so much? I know you've stated that they provide a very niche upside, but there's got to be another reason. Yeah, there's about a $300 reason emanating off the top of the hat that I wear most often. Would you ever take a look at the other RTD effects that probably aren't in the official list, like full team crits or go home? Yeah, so actually the official plugin's being updated right now, and I've been experimenting with some of the new effects, but Phil25, who is the developer of the plugin who's been updating it recently, still has plans to make a lot of changes to most of the effects, so I'm kind of waiting for the dust to settle and for the development to at least pause for a while before I go over all of the new ones. That being said, if you're talking about the community server specific ones, I know there are some community server that I played that had a really stupidly broken effect called Reflector, where it's basically if you deal damage to the person with Reflector, you take the damage instead, and the person with the effect doesn't. So they're basically invincible, and you have like eye for an eye when you shoot them, and they can also still capture the control point. So, like, no, I'm not even putting myself through that for footage. Just imagine a tier list with, like, 7 different S tiers, where it's, like, S, and then SS, and then SSS, and then the reflectors all the way at the top. That's my tier list. That's all you have to worry about. Do you think that the reskins from Pokemon at the inventory should be added to the item drop system, with the already acquired ones become tradable and genuine? I don't know if they should be added to the item drop system, because they are all reskins, after all. They're not adding anything new when you get them. I do think they should be craftable, though. I think they should require at least, like, some maybe niche thing to craft. But you should still be able to get them in some form. Or literally just make the existing ones tradable, because I'm sure there are plenty of people who owned Pokernite back in the day that don't want them anymore and would be willing to sell them. They'd probably be expensive, but I mean, it would at least not be completely unobtainable at that point. Do you think that Valve has any obligation to update TF2? And if so, do you think it's just bug fixes and bot banning, or actual decent updates? At the very least, yes, Valve should provide a playable game if they're still going to monetize it. That's my hardline moral stance, is if you're going to make money off of gambling, no less, at least let the game be playable. Put the bare minimum amount of effort into, like, banning the bots and fixing the bugs and stuff. Like, my goodness. In terms of content updates, I don't think Valve has an obligation to, necessarily, but I think they are leaving money on the table by not touching it. If TF2 had a single content update with, like, 4 weapons and, like, a couple balance fixes, do you know how many people would flock back to the game? TF2 would immediately double its player count from the record high. They're leaving so much money on the table by not touching the game. I've never understood that. But in terms of, like, an obligation, I don't think they have to do anything beyond providing a playable product now. What are features from TF2 Classic that you liked or even preferred over regular TF2, both from the native game and or from any mods? Okay, so the main reason that I even play TF2 Classic when I do is because the hunting revolver is so satisfying to use. When I play first-person shooters, like normal ones, not TF2 with all its crazy stuff, usually the weapon type that I gravitate toward are marksman rifles, or in other words, sniper rifles, but they fire faster and don't necessarily insta-kill, and usually they're like a closer range scope. For whatever reason, those are just the type of weapons that I find the most satisfaction and skill with using. TF2 has nothing like that. It basically has no mid-range weapons. It has really close-range weapons, and then the sniper rifles. Like, I don't know. I would love for the hunting revolver to be an official weapon in TF2. I think that would add a lot of stuff. Other than that, this isn't really a mechanic, but the graphical style of TF2 Classic is fantastic, and I wish that's what TF2 went with, just with the shader engine and some of the explosion particles. And also, I wouldn't mind them adding the civilian as a playable class. I think he's charming enough. But yeah, mainly just some of the extra weapons. I think TF2 Classic has a lot of really good custom weapons that are well thought out that just, I don't know, would work really well in normal TF2. And I'm sad that I don't get to use them in synergy with some of the TF2 exclusive weapons. Why do you play Degreaser Pyro if Jungle Inferno nerfed Combo Pyro? Isn't it basically just a worse stock flamethrower? It's definitely not as good as stock, and I do think the Degreaser needs a couple buffs to make it serve its intended purpose, because right now I think it's kind of buggy. But the reason why I still use it, even if it's not perfect, is that number one, being able to switch from your primary to your secondary a lot faster does still have value, even if it's not as necessary as it was pre-universal weapon switch speed buff. Being able to combo into flares that quickly actually is really good. I think a lot of people underestimate that. But the main reason that I use it is because the switch 2 speed means that you can whip out the Degreaser in like a small fraction of a second, which is insane for reflecting if you're able to react to stuff quickly. Usually what I do is I like tap someone with the shotgun or flare. Inevitably, the soldier will whip around to me and fire, and then I already have the Degreaser set to go by the time he's there. If I use stock, inevitably I will run into the situation where I try that, and then I'll just get obliterated because I can't air blast fast enough. So yeah, I mean, stock probably would be better in a wider variety of situations, and I wish the Degreaser at minimum had a universal switch speed buff and not just a to and from bonus, but I don't know. I think it's still worth using if you've gotten used to it. And the last question that I'll answer is one that I couldn't figure out which video to put in because it's half related to me and half related to TF2. But has playing TF2 so you can generate content on YouTube changed how much enjoyment you get from the game? The answer is yes. There are a lot of times where I'm nearing the end of like a project and I just need one clip for background footage, but by God, I'm either really tired and just suck that day, or it's just the games aren't going how I want them to, and it's a lot more frustrating than it otherwise should be. Usually when I'm playing TF2 and I'm allowed to just pick whatever class and weapon that I've wanted, which I've started to lean into more for videos recently with stuff like weapons I was wrong about and stuff like that, I find that those are really fun. However, inevitably, I'll have some video that requires me to play a specific weapon in class, and if I don't like that weapon or class, I'm just not going to have fun, and it's kind of a chore to have to sit down and play with something that I hate using. And again, I've made videos talking about the times where I've actually come around to like something, but that doesn't happen much. Those are the exceptions, and usually what happens is I'll get like, oh, I have to get a good clip of me playing Soldier with the Bison, time to waste 3 hours of my life, and I don't know. Maybe it's a mindset thing, but I do often find that playing TF2, especially when I'm specifically trying to get a good clip, is a lot more stressful than it otherwise should be, and in those times, I really don't enjoy playing TF2, I will be honest with you, but I don't know, I feel like there are ways, again, that I could balance that out a lot more. So anyway, that's a good sampling of TF2-related questions that I wanted to put in the second part of the Q&A. Thanks for sticking with me if you have already. What I'm willing to do is if people have enough questions that I think are interesting that I didn't answer in the first two parts, leave them either as a comment on this video or the last one or the community post on my main channel, and I'll take a look. And if I have enough interesting ones, or if I just happen to find enough interesting ones like in the questions doc that I didn't get to originally, I'll make a part 3. I don't really mind talking about stuff like this. I think it's interesting to share my thoughts about random stuff and see what other people think. So yeah, just if you have any, let me know. If not, thanks for sticking with me for both parts of the Q&A. If you've not seen part 1, I don't know, it's interesting, go watch it. It's a good thing to throw on as you're playing TF2 in the background, weirdly enough. But yeah, that's it. See ya.